April 12, 1945. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. The air smells like pine needles and something else, something Greta Fisher hasn't smelled in so long she can barely identify it. Frying bacon. Real bacon. The scent drifts across the compound as she steps off the transport truck, her legs shaking. Her Red Cross armband still tied around her sleeve, though it's stained with mud and blood from the field hospital in Alsace, where American forces captured her 3 weeks ago. She's 23 years old. She hasn't eaten a full meal in 6 days, and she's absolutely terrified. Everything she's been told, everything drilled into her since she was 17, screams that this moment, this arrival at an enemy prison camp, will be the beginning of her end. The propaganda films showed American soldiers as savage, as brutal. The stories whispered among the nurses spoke of worse things, things that made her stomach turn. But as she stands there in the Louisiana heat, blinking in the bright April sunshine, a guard approaches her with something in his hands. A tin cup. Steam rises from it. The smell hits her before she can process what she's seeing. Coffee. Real coffee. Not the acorn substitute, not the chicory blend that tasted like dirt. Actual coffee. Her hands tremble as she takes the cup. She stares at it like it might be poison. The guard, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a thick southern accent she can barely understand, gestures for her to drink. She brings the cup to her lips. The first sip burns her tongue, but she doesn't care. The taste explodes across her senses, rich and bitter and real, and suddenly she's crying, tears streaming down her face as she stands there in her filthy uniform, holding this cup of coffee like it's the most precious thing in the world. This is not what she expected. This is not what any of them expected. And this is only the beginning of Greta Fisher's complete unraveling of everything she thought she knew about the enemy. The processing building smells like disinfectant and paper. Greta moves through it in a daze, still clutching the empty coffee cup because no one has asked for it back. There are other German prisoners here, mostly men, a few women. She recognizes one, Ilse, another nurse from a different unit. Ilse's eyes are wide, darting around like a trapped animal's. They're herded into a large room with tables. On each table sits a tray. Greta approaches her slowly, suspiciously. She's been hungry for so long that hunger has become a constant companion, a dull ache she's learned to ignore. But now, staring at what's in front of her, that hunger roars back to life with such ferocity it makes her dizzy. White bread, not the dense, dark Kriegsbrot made from sawdust and potato peels. White bread, soft and pillowy, the kind she remembers from childhood before the war consumed everything. Next to it, a small dish of butter. Real butter, yellow and creamy. An orange. A whole orange, bright and impossibly vibrant against the dull metal tray. And more coffee, a full pot of it, sitting at the end of the table. She looks around, certain this is a trick, a test. Maybe they're checking to see which prisoners are so weak-willed they'll gorge themselves. Maybe the food is poisoned. Maybe this is psychological torture, showing them abundance before starving them. But the other prisoners are eating. Slowly at first, then faster. One man is crying as he peels his orange, the citrus smell filling the air, sharp and sweet and utterly foreign after years of deprivation. Greta sits. Her hands shake as she reaches for the bread. The texture is so soft it almost dissolves under her fingers. She spreads butter on it, watching the yellow cream melt slightly into the warm bread. She takes a bite. The taste is indescribable. It's not just food, it's memory. It's every Sunday morning before the war, every birthday, every moment of normalcy that's been stripped away. The bread is sweet and rich, the butter coating her mouth with a smoothness she'd forgotten existed. She eats slowly, then faster, then she's sobbing into her hands, bread crumbs falling onto the table. Because this kindness, this unexpected, inexplicable kindness, is more devastating than any cruelty could have been. The orange takes her 10 minutes to peel. Her fingers are clumsy, the skin breaking apart in ragged chunks. Juice runs down her hands, sticky and fragrant. When she finally gets a segment into her mouth, the burst of flavor is so intense she gasps. Sweetness, tartness, the texture of the flesh against her tongue. She hasn't tasted fresh fruit in 3 years. 3 years. The war has stolen so much, but somehow she'd forgotten about oranges, about the simple pleasure of citrus, about flavors that aren't gray and grim. She eats every segment slowly, reverently, then she eats the pith, even though it's bitter because she can't bear to waste any of it. Around her, other prisoners are having similar breakdowns. Ilse is staring at her bread like she doesn't trust it. An older man, a Wehrmacht officer by his uniform, is drinking coffee with his eyes closed, tears streaming down his weathered face. A young soldier, barely 18, has eaten his orange so fast he's now bent over, retching, his body unable to handle the sudden influx of real food. But no one stops them. No one punishes them. The American guards stand at the edges of the room, watching with expressions Greta can't quite read. Not mockery, not cruelty, something else. Something that might be pity or sadness or both. One guard, a young woman in uniform, approaches Ilse and says something in English. Ilse doesn't understand, but the guard gestures, miming eating slowly. She's trying to help, trying to keep them from making themselves sick. Greta's mind reels. This doesn't fit. None of this fits the narrative she's been fed, the certainty she's carried that capture meant brutality, starvation, death. Instead, she's sitting in a clean room, eating white bread and oranges, drinking real coffee and being treated like a human being. The cognitive dissonance is almost painful. The barracks are another shock. Greta expected overcrowding, filth, the conditions she's heard described in whispered stories about Soviet camps. Instead, she's assigned to a women's section, a long wooden building with rows of cots, each with a thin mattress, a pillow, and 2 blankets. There are windows with screens to keep out insects. The floor is swept clean. At the end of the room, there's a bathroom. A real bathroom with running water, toilets that flush, sinks with soap. Soap. Greta stands in front of the sink for a long moment, staring at the bar of white soap sitting in a dish. She picks it up, brings it to her nose. It smells like lye and something floral, artificial but clean. She turns on the tap. Water flows out, clear and cold. She washes her hands, watching the dirt and grime of weeks dissolve under the stream, the soap creating actual lather, white and foamy. Her hands, when she's done, are pink and clean, the skin raw from scrubbing. She looks at them like they belong to someone else. That night, lying on her cot, Greta can't sleep. The mattress is too soft. The silence is too quiet. She's used to the constant noise of the field hospital, the groans of wounded soldiers, the whistle of shells, the chaos of war. Here, there's just the sound of other women breathing, the distant hum of insects, the occasional footstep of a guard outside. She thinks about her mother in Hamburg, if she's still alive, if the city is still standing. She thinks about the soldiers she treated, the ones who died in her arms, the ones she couldn't save. She thinks about the propaganda officer who visited the hospital last year, who told them that capture by the Americans meant rape and torture, that they should save the last bullet for themselves rather than surrender. She thinks about the coffee, the bread, the orange, the soap, and she doesn't understand. She doesn't understand any of it. The next morning, after another meal that includes oatmeal with sugar and milk, things Greta hasn't seen in years. A guard approaches her. It's the woman from yesterday, the one who tried to help Ilse. She's carrying a small basket. Through broken German and gestures, she communicates that she's the wife of one of the camp commanders. Her name is Mary. She's brought something for the female prisoners. Greta watches as Mary unpacks the basket, hand lotion, small bottles of it with labels showing flowers, a comb, several combs actually with fine teeth, a mirror. A real mirror, not a shard of broken glass or a polished piece of metal. And lipstick. 3 tubes of lipstick in different shades of red and pink. The other women gather around, staring at these items like they're treasures from another world. Because they are. These are things from before, from the world of normalcy and femininity and care. Things that have no place in war, no purpose in survival. Mary picks up one of the bottles of lotion and opens it. The scent that emerges is overwhelming. Roses. It smells like roses, sweet and heady and impossibly delicate. She squeezes some into her palm and holds it out to Greta, gesturing for her to take it. Greta's hands are shaking again as she accepts the lotion. It's cool and creamy, white with a faint pink tint. She rubs it between her palms, then spreads it over her hands, her wrists, her forearms. The sensation is extraordinary. Her skin, cracked and dry from years of harsh soap and cold water and constant work, drinks in the moisture. The scent envelops her, soft and feminine, and utterly at odds with everything she's experienced for the past 5 years. She brings her hands to her face, breathing in the rose scent, and something inside her breaks. She's sobbing again, great heaving sobs that shake her whole body, and Mary is there, this enemy woman, this American, putting an arm around her shoulders and saying something in English that Greta doesn't understand but knows is meant to be comforting. The other women are crying too. Ilse has the mirror and is staring at her reflection, touching her face like she's seeing a stranger. Another nurse, Anna, is trying the lipstick, her hands trembling so badly she smears it across her cheek. They look at each other, these German women in their stained uniforms, now smelling of roses and wearing smudged lipstick, and they laugh through their tears because it's absurd. All of it is absurd. This kindness in the middle of their defeat. Greta starts writing letters home, even though she doesn't know if they'll ever be delivered. The camp allows it, provides paper and pencils. She writes to her mother, careful not to say anything that might be censored, but trying to convey the strange reality of her captivity. She writes about the food, the abundance that seems impossible. She writes about Mary and the lotion, about the small kindnesses that accumulate day by day. She doesn't write about her confusion, about the way her worldview is crumbling, because she doesn't have words for that yet. But she keeps a diary too, hidden under her mattress where she's more honest. May 3rd, 1945. The war is over. We heard today, Germany has surrendered. I should feel something, grief or relief or anger, but I just feel numb. The Americans gave us extra rations tonight, as if celebrating with us or maybe mourning with us. I don't know anymore. I don't know anything. A guard, the older one with the kind eyes, brought me an extra orange. He didn't say anything, just left it on my cot. I ate it slowly in the dark and cried for everything we've lost. May 10th, 1945. They showed us a film today, from the camps, the concentration camps. Belsen, Dachau, others, they made us watch. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was propaganda, fake, designed to make us feel guilty. But Ilse recognized one of the guards in the footage. She'd met him once years ago before the war. She said he was always cruel even then. I watched the bodies, the skeletons, the piles of corpses, and I felt sick. We knew there were camps. We knew Jews were being relocated. But this horror, how did we not know? How did I not know? The American guards watched us watching. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. I can't sleep now. Every time I close my eyes, I see those images. And I think about the bread, the coffee, the oranges. I think about how they're feeding us, treating us with dignity, even after this. Even knowing what Germany, what our people did. I don't understand it. I don't deserve it. The medical supplies arrive in June. Greta has been working in the camp infirmary, helping treat prisoners who are sick or injured. There's not much to do, mostly minor ailments, but it gives her purpose, something to focus on besides her spiraling thoughts. One morning, a truck pulls up outside the infirmary. American soldiers start unloading crates. Greta watches from the window, curious. The camp doctor, an American captain named Richardson, comes to find her. Through an interpreter, he explains that these supplies are for her, for the German medical staff, to use in treating their fellow prisoners. Greta follows him outside. The crates are being stacked in the infirmary storage room. She watches as they're opened. Inside are bandages, clean and white and abundant, sulfa drugs, morphine, surgical instruments gleaming and sterile, iodine, alcohol, gauze, everything she's been desperately short of for years, everything she's improvised without, everything she's watched soldiers die for lack of. There's enough here to supply a field hospital for months. Captain Richardson is explaining something to the interpreter who turns to Greta. They want you to inventory it, he says in German. They want to make sure you have everything you need. If there's something missing, they'll try to get it. Greta stares at him. She stares at the crates, at the abundance of supplies, at the American doctor who's looking at her with professional courtesy, as if she's a colleague and not a prisoner, not the enemy. Something inside her snaps. She's tried to hold it together, tried to process everything, the kindness and the guilt and the confusion. But this gesture of trust, of respect, of recognizing her as a medical professional who deserves the tools to do her job, it's too much. She collapses. Not fainting, but her legs just give out, and she's on her knees in the Louisiana dirt, surrounded by crates of medical supplies, sobbing so hard she can't breathe. The sounds coming from her are animal, raw, years of suppressed emotion pouring out all at once. She's crying for the soldiers she couldn't save, for the supplies she didn't have, for the lies she believed, for the country that betrayed everything she thought it stood for. She's crying for the kindness of these Americans, which is somehow more devastating than cruelty would have been, because it forces her to confront everything she was wrong about, everything she didn't question when she should have. Captain Richardson kneels beside her. He doesn't touch her, doesn't try to make her stop. He just waits, patient and quiet, while she falls apart. When she finally catches her breath, gasping and hiccuping, he says something in English. The interpreter translates. He says you're a good nurse. He says he's read your records, the testimonies from soldiers you treated. He says you saved lives, even when you had nothing to work with. He says you deserve these supplies. You've always deserved them. Greta looks up at him through her tears. His face is kind but serious. He's older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. He looks like someone's father. He looks like someone who understands what it means to try to heal in the middle of destruction. She manages to say thank you in broken English. He nods, then stands and offers her his hand. She takes it, lets him help her to her feet. Her legs are still shaking, but she's steadier now. He gestures to the crates, says something else. The interpreter smiles slightly as he translates. He says to put them to good use. He says there are still people who need help, and now you can give it to them. Over the next weeks, Greta throws herself into work. She organizes the infirmary, trains other prisoners with medical experience, treats everything from infected cuts to pneumonia. She has the supplies now. She can actually help. And helping, healing, gives her something to hold on to when everything else feels like it's slipping away. She writes in her diary almost every night. June 20th, 1945. Treated 15 patients today. Everything from minor injuries to a case of appendicitis that Captain Richardson and I handled together. He let me assist in the surgery, trusted me with instruments, with sutures. Afterward, he complimented my technique. I almost cried again, but I'm trying to stop crying at every kindness. It's exhausting. July 4th, 1945. The Americans celebrated their Independence Day. There was a party, music, food. They invited us, the prisoners, to watch. Some refused, too proud or too bitter. But I went. I watched them dance and laugh and eat. They gave us hot dogs and something called potato salad and watermelon. The watermelon was incredible, sweet and cold and refreshing in the summer heat. I sat with Ilse and Anna and we watched these people, our enemies, celebrate their freedom. And I realized I wasn't angry. I was envious. Not of their victory, but of their certainty, their confidence in what they're fighting for. I never had that. I believed what I was told, but I never felt certain. Now I don't know what I believe anymore. Mary, the commander's wife, continues to visit. She brings small things, magazines sometimes, or cookies she's baked. She's teaching Greta English, pointing at objects and saying the words slowly. Table, chair, window, sky. Greta repeats them, her accent thick but improving. They sit together in the shade of a tree outside the women's barracks, and Mary talks about her life before the war, about her children who are grown now, about her garden back home. Greta talks too, haltingly, about Hamburg, about studying nursing, about her father who died when she was young. They don't talk about the war directly, but it's there between them, the enormous weight of it, the thing that brought them together in this strange, unlikely friendship. One afternoon, Mary brings a photograph. It's of her son in uniform, Army Air Corps. Greta looks at the young man in the picture, handsome and smiling, and feels a chill. Mary's voice is quiet as she explains, through gestures and the few German words she's learned, that he was killed 2 years ago, over France. Greta's hands tremble as she holds the photograph. She looks at Mary, this woman who has been nothing but kind to her, who brought her lotion and mirrors and cookies, and she understands that Mary's son might have been killed by German anti-aircraft fire, by people Greta worked alongside, by the same military machine she was part of. She tries to give the photograph back, but Mary shakes her head. She says something in English slowly, and Greta understands enough. He was a good boy. The war took him. The war took so many. I don't blame you. Greta is crying again, silently this time, tears streaming down her face as she looks at this picture of a dead American soldier, held by his mother, who is comforting her, a German prisoner. The absurdity of it, the profound sadness of it, the strange grace of it, overwhelms her. She thinks about all the mothers, German and American and British and Russian, all the mothers who lost sons, who are grieving the same grief regardless of which side they were on. She thinks about the propaganda that taught her to see Americans as monsters, and she looks at Mary, who is just a woman, just a mother, just a human being trying to find meaning in senseless loss. I'm sorry, Greta manages in English. I'm so sorry. Mary takes her hand, squeezes it. I know, she says, I know. As summer turns to fall, plans are made for repatriation. The prisoners will be sent back to Germany, to a country that no longer exists as they knew it, to cities that might be rubble, to families that might be gone. Greta is terrified. She's been in the camp for 6 months now, and it's become familiar, safe in its own way. She knows the routine, knows the guards, knows that she'll be fed and treated with basic human dignity. Going back means facing the destruction, the guilt, the enormous task of rebuilding not just buildings but an entire society's moral foundation. She writes to her mother, letters that are finally being delivered now that mail service is being restored. She receives a reply in October. Her mother is alive. Hamburg is devastated, but she's alive, living with Greta's aunt in the countryside. The relief is overwhelming, but so is the weight of what comes next. In her diary, she writes, October 15th, 1945. We leave next week. I should be happy to go home, but I'm scared. I've been changed by this place, by these people. I came here expecting to be treated as the enemy, and instead I was treated as a human being. I was given food and shelter and medical supplies and kindness. I was given the space to confront what Germany did, what I was part of, even if I didn't know the full extent. I don't know how to go back and face people who still believe the lies, who still think we were right, who haven't had their certainties shattered the way mine have. Captain Richardson told me yesterday that I'm a good nurse, that I should keep practicing, that Germany will need people like me. Mary gave me a care package for the journey, food, and a new bottle of hand lotion, rose-scented like the first one. She hugged me, this American woman whose son my country killed, and she told me to take care of myself. I don't know how to hold all of this, the grief and the gratitude and the guilt. But I know I'm not the same person who arrived here in April, terrified and starving and full of propaganda. I know that the enemy showed me more humanity than my own government ever did. And I know that I'll carry that with me, whatever comes next. The day of departure is cold and gray. The prisoners are loaded onto trucks, heading to the port where ships will take them across the Atlantic. Greta stands in line with her small bag of possessions, the care package from Mary, a letter of recommendation from Captain Richardson that might help her find work as a nurse in Germany. She looks back at the camp, this place that was supposed to be a prison but became something else, something she doesn't have a word for. A place of reckoning, maybe, a place of unexpected grace. As the truck pulls away, she sees Mary standing by the fence, waving. Greta waves back, tears streaming down her face again, because she knows she'll probably never see this woman again, this unlikely friend who taught her that the world is more complicated than propaganda, that humanity exists even in the midst of enmity, that kindness is a choice people make even when they have every reason not to. The truck rumbles down the Louisiana road, past pine trees and fields, heading toward whatever comes next. Greta clutches her bag and thinks about coffee and oranges and hand lotion. She thinks about medical supplies and trust and the photograph of a dead soldier held by his grieving mother. She thinks about everything she was told and everything she learned, and she knows that the distance between those two things is the space where she'll have to build her life now. It won't be easy. Nothing about the future will be easy, but she has something she didn't have before. She has the knowledge that even in the darkest times, even between enemies, humanity can survive. That people can choose kindness over cruelty, dignity over degradation, hope over despair. It's a small thing, maybe, in the face of everything that was lost, everything that was destroyed, but it's something. And as the truck carries her toward the port, toward the ship, toward home and all its uncertainties, Greta Fisher holds onto that knowledge like a lifeline, like a promise, like the scent of roses on her hands that refuses to fade. If you found yourself moved by Greta's story, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what moment hit you hardest. And if you want more untold stories from the human side of history, stories that challenge what you think you know, hit that subscribe button. Because history isn't just about battles and politics. It's about moments like these, when everything you believed gets turned upside down by something as simple as a cup of coffee or a bottle of hand lotion. It's about the people who lived through the unimaginable and came out the other side changed, carrying truths that the history books often miss. There are so many more stories to tell, so many voices that deserve to be heard. And this is just the beginning.